Singapore is the 20th century's most successfully developed country. But do you know the country only had little land and no natural resources to begin with after its independence in 1965? In this video, we're going to take a look at how Singapore managed to not only survive, but became one of the most cosmopolitan places on Earth. Before knowing all that, let's just start from where it begins. Singapore's history began on August 9, 1965, when it was evicted from Malaysia and was declared an independent country. Following the separation, the developing nation faced challenges such as mass unemployment, housing shortages, and a lack of land and natural resources such as petroleum. The man who built the nation again. From 1959 to 1990, Lee Kuan Yew served as Prime Minister of Singapore, reducing unemployment, raising the standard of living, and implementing a large-scale public housing program. The country's economic infrastructure was improved, racial tensions were reduced, and a self-defense system was established. Lee, an autocrat whose little island state became one of the richest locations on the planet, and a role model for other governments in Asia and beyond, was one of the most influential leaders of the 20th century. By the end of the 20th century, Singapore had progressed from a dying nation to a first-world country. Growth phase. Singapore has made significant investments to foster economic growth. Goh Keng Swee established the Economic Development Board in 1961, and with the help of Dutch economic advisor Albert Winsemius, national economic strategies were developed to enhance Singapore's manufacturing industry. Industrial estates were established, particularly in Jurong's reclaimed swampland, and government ministers travelled the globe in an attempt to attract international investment. New investors were awarded 5 to 10-year tax breaks by the government. Singapore is viewed by conservatives as a free market success tale. It is one of the most cosmopolitan places on the planet, thanks to low taxes, little capital limitations, and generous immigration rules. As a result, it has become a magnet for the world's wealthiest people, from Facebook co-founder Eduardo Saverin to gaming mogul Forrest Lai. Private banking, family offices, and asset management have all exploded in the area. There are signs of luxury all throughout the place. According to Knight Frank Singapore, sales of high-end bungalows, the city's equivalent of mansions, surged in 2021. Golf memberships have increased by 40% since the outbreak, costing as much as 350,000 Singapore dollars. That's 262,000 US dollars for Singaporeans and more for expats. The manufacturing industry boom. Singapore's port offered her an advantage over her neighbours, as it was a favourable location for efficient exports of refined commodities and raw material imports. As a result, Singapore's industries were able to easily access worldwide markets and obtain lower raw material prices. As Singapore became increasingly industrialised, entrepot trade expanded to include the processing of imported raw materials into exported finished products, resulting in better value-added items and more revenue for the island. Although a variant of it was later developed with the founding of ASEAN, this proved to be an acceptable alternative to a common market for the Malaysian hinterland. The service industry flourished at the same time, fueled by increased commerce and demand for services from ships calling at the port. This progress aided in the reduction of unemployment. With Winsemius' support, Singapore attracted major oil corporations such as Shell and Esso to build refineries, and by the mid-1970s, it was the world's third largest oil refining center. Education system. The educational system was created to be rigorous and intensive, with a focus on immediate practical applications rather than cerebral ones, such as technical sciences rather than political debate or philosophy. Education received a considerable percentage of Singapore's budget. almost 1/5 of the total, in order to provide a big and qualified workforce upon graduation. Singapore's government is currently maintaining it at this level. The housing industry. Housing is much more important in terms of financial stability. Nearly 80% of the population lives in government-built apartments, which are generally well-maintained, and purchasing a government-subsidized apartment is a frequent method to enter the property market. Owners can sell for a profit and move into a more valued home after a few years. As Prime Minister Lee stated in 2010, a government apartment is not simply a shelter, but also an important financial asset. According to DBS Group research published in October, the average private property currently costs nearly 15 times median household wages due to soaring prices. The middle class is being forced out of the market, and prices are projected to continue to rise. Rising prices have forced some cash-strapped buyers into the rental market. Jennifer Chia, a lawyer at TSMP Law Corporation, who heads the firm's corporate real estate, banking and finance practices, said, "Inflation is also making it difficult for would-be homeowners to save," according to her. Progress onwards, 1980s. Further economic success followed in the 1980s, with the unemployment rate falling to 3% and real GDP growth averaging around 8% until 1999. Singapore faced the issue of upgrading its industries to higher technology industries in the 1980s in order to compete with its neighbors who were exporting the same products at a lower price. Singapore used to be a textile manufacturing center. A trained workforce with a willingness to learn, for example, aided in the transfer to new occupations in the rapidly growing wafer manufacturing industry in Singapore. Changi Airport in Singapore first established itself in 1981. The development of air transportation meant that entrepot trade could be expanded even further, as well as the intended goal of recruiting investors by providing a quick means to enter and exit the country. The hospitality industry, for example, rose dramatically in tandem with Singapore Airlines, resulting in more tourism. Singapore has become one of the world's most successful countries, with extensive international trade linkages as a result of its consistent high economic growth. Its port is one of the busiest in the world, and its per capita GDP is higher than that of the main Western European countries. The education budget remains at 1/5 or more of the overall budget, and many of the policies, such as racial harmony, are still in place today. Afterward, the millennium. Singapore had some of its most major post-war challenges in the first few years of the 21st century, including the SARS outbreak in 2003 and the threat of terrorism. In December 2001, 15 members of the Jemaah Islamiyah were arrested under the Internal Security Act after a plot to bomb embassies and other facilities in Singapore was discovered. Major counter-terrorism procedures have been implemented to detect and prevent potential terrorist activities, as well as to mitigate the consequences if they do occur. Meanwhile, the economy suffered only minor effects throughout the crisis, with an average monthly household income of Singapore dollars 4,870 in 2003. Lee Kuan Yew's eldest son, Lee Hsien Loong, became Singapore's third Prime Minister in 2004. Since then, a number of national policy reforms have been proposed and implemented. The decrease of national service training requirements from 2.5 to 2 years in 2005 was one of those adjustments. The government has launched the Cutting Red Tape program, which allows residents to express their opinions on legislation, punishment, social and international concerns. The slowly building class divide. Even before the pandemic, inequality was a contentious topic. According to research published in 2017 by the Institute of Policy Studies, Singapore's most severe social inequalities are defined by class, rather than race or religion. The class was also recognized as the nation's most contentious fault line in a study commissioned by onepeople.sg, the national body promoting harmony the following year. The impact on livelihoods was obvious as the pandemic broke out in 2020. Between April and September 2020, median household income of applicants seeking financial assistance from the local charity Beyond Social Services fell by 69%, from 1,600 Singapore dollars to 500 per month. For the impoverished citizens of Singapore, there are some safeguards in place. More than a third of the annual state budget is spent on affordable education, healthcare, and housing. To make the top schools more accessible, efforts are being made to increase the number of spaces available for children who have no ties to the schools and to eliminate the practice of grouping pupils by grades. Those who live in one- or two-room government flats, on the other hand, receive more state support than those who live in larger apartments. The wealth issues. More action has been called for by establishment officials. Finance Minister Lawrence Wong stated in October that the wealthy should pay their fair share of taxes and that the government was looking into wealth tax possibilities. Ravi Menon, the governor of the central bank, has proposed that the country move away from taxing income and instead tax wealth, citing property and inheritance as viable options. There are some supporters even among the city's wealthiest people. Wealth taxes are really vital globally because the most glaring split between the super-rich and the rest of the world is wealth disparity, not income equality, said entrepreneur Ho, whose Banyan Tree Holdings Limited operates luxury hotels and resorts in 28 countries. The issue is that part of our economic policy is centered on luring the super-rich, he continued. The problem is figuring out how to get more out of them without scaring them away. In addition, Prime Minister Lee has stated that wealth is more difficult to detect than income. Ties with Malaysia. The post-independence relationship between Singapore and Malaysia is complicated and tumultuous at times. Despite their disputes, Malaysia remains a significant economic hinterland and regional ally, due to their ASEAN membership. When you realize that a large portion of Singapore's water supply originates from Malaysia, this relevance becomes even more clear. Both countries have been known to chastise or even threaten each other for differences in post-independence pathways pursued, although this has never escalated to the point of embargo or hostilities. The present-day Singapore. In a way that liberal economists praised, the government has also provided social services such as housing and healthcare. Singapore's motto has always been, "Work hard and you'll get ahead." The major enablers of class mobility are education and home ownership, while the country's social contract emphasizes individual and family responsibility, reflecting Confucian ideals among a predominantly Chinese population. The government will help individuals in need. In terms of history, rags to riches stories abound. Goh Cheng Liang, a 94-year-old billionaire and one of Singapore's wealthiest persons, began his career selling fishing nets and low-quality paint. One of the frontrunners to succeed the Prime Minister, Education Minister Chan Chung Sing, was reared by a single mother who worked 2 jobs. As establishment leaders such as the central bank director and the finance minister publicly voiced the alarm about inequities, the government is considering expanding its wealth tax system, in addition to existing charges on property and cars. That's all for today's video. If you're visiting this channel for the first time, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a video from us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.